Welcome into TYT's The Conversation. I'm your host, Adrienne Lawrence, and I have an incredible guest for you. Executive Director of the Western State Center and Senior Fellow with the Southern Poverty Law Center, Eric Ward. Thank you for joining us, Eric.
Adrienne, it's great to see you. Thank you for having me.
Yes, oh man, and we were just kind of talking before the show was kicked off about how wild things are right now coming out of 4 years of absolute chaos and destruction. How's it going for you?
It has indeed been 100 days almost since the insurrection on January 6th. And it has been a hard time for our organization, for communities. You know, many of us are a little bit on a sugar high. Right, we mobilized across this country to stand up for democracy. We were able to block this drive towards authoritarianism, and we're feeling that joy. But the truth is those who are involved in the insurrection, those who gave support to it, those folks are still very much around, still very much busy at dismantling democracy, blocking civil rights. And attempting to intimidate folks through political violence. We have a long way to go, but certainly we should understand that we are at a better position because of the hard work that's been done.
Yes, absolutely. There has been a lot of hard work put in by people who are actually committed to democracy, and we're very grateful to them. But as you mentioned, hey, we have a full kind of a faction of people out there who are trying to dismantle this, and they also to some extent have been brainwashed. And I know that Sunday, April 11th, there's going to be a White Lives Matter group that's reportedly planning a protest at Ohio Statehouse. And I was hoping you could tell me, why is this newsworthy?
Yeah, it's newsworthy because of the phrasing, this idea white lives matters. And we should understand white lives matters is probably less an organization and more an organizing tactic. It is seeking to try to generate publicity. And it's not altogether different, the call of white lives matters, right, than the call of reverse racism in the 1980s, right, or in the 90s, this idea of white student unions. It's an attempt to kind of shock the conversation, the real conversations that are happening around race in the society, right? In policing, in economy. And they are basically trying to hijack that conversation by drawing this false equivalency in the same way. If you can't say Black Lives Matters, why can't you say White Lives Matters? It's an attempt to shift the narrative. We should understand there is no one in this country out there saying white lives don't matter. In fact, I learn White Lives Matters every time I walk out the door, every time I try to conduct business, engage health in this country. No one is arguing that White Lives Matters. This is an attempt to usurp the conversation and a momentum towards equity, opportunity, and prosperity in this country. It's an attempt to try to build political violence, but it is propaganda, and it remains to be seen if they're able to really mobilize around this event. In truth, the white nationalist movement and the alt-right is reeling from arrests that have happened, from job losses, and the understanding that the majority of Americans believe in inclusion. And the White Lives Matters is an attempt to delude us or deceive us into believing that this country is on the march towards exclusion, but it's not. We're just watching people throw tantrums.
And they are very, unfortunately, violent tantrums, as we saw on January 6th, as well as when we've seen instances of largely groups of white people necessarily coming together and this feeling of victimhood, or that some rights are being taken away from white people and whatnot. And so it does bring a lot of fear in the minds of others, including people who are also white and more toward the inclusion and understand where Black Lives Matter comes from. So kind of, I guess, should people be on edge when it comes to events like this?
We have to take it seriously. We have to understand that there is a social movement that is not grounded in inclusion, it's in exclusion. And it seeks to create a white-only ethno-state, and it seeks to achieve that by rolling back the gains of civil rights that have occurred over the last 75 years. They have shown and been clear that they are willing to use physical violence to achieve that means. We absolutely have to take it seriously, but we have to understand that they do not define the agenda of America. What they do is attempt to distract us from the work that's ahead. So let's take it seriously, but let's understand the best way that we challenge the white nationalist movement is by making real the promise of equity, opportunity, and prosperity in America.
It does seem that a lot of people don't seem to understand that equity doesn't necessarily mean that they will lose out, that this is not a zero-sum game. But it seems that a lot of people don't necessarily understand that. And we saw a lot of that indoctrination go on over the last 4 years. And now we are living with the consequences of that. So now that you've seen this new administration coming in, given your position as executive director of the Western State Center, also being a senior fellow at the Southern Poverty Law Center, what change do you think needs to be implemented to truly make change from essentially what pieces we're left with post-Trump administration?
Yes, the administration has to move very quickly to secure voting rights in this country. We cannot allow states who are attempting to usurp the democratic practice from engaging in this type of violence, or engaging in violence or engaging in political distraction to deny the vote to individuals. So we have to defend the vote. That's the first piece. The second is we have to understand that there are real needs that Americans are facing in this country, whether we're talking about health, housing, and employment, and we need to meet those needs. We have to understand that the answer and the solution to the white nationalist movement is not a status quo of inequality. We really have to meet the needs of all Americans so that we can move forward together. The third is this, though. We have to pay attention to the criminal activity of white nationalists and those who seek to undercut democratic small d practice in this country. We have to make sure that law enforcement is not drawing false distinctions between human rights activists and white nationalists engaged in political violence in this country. And we have to make sure that law enforcement is inoculated from attempts by the white nationalist movement to recruit. Those are the real issues that are ahead of us in this moment. And we have to do it at a time where we're also contending with a global pandemic. We have real work to do. We have to roll up our sleeves. We have to manage this white nationalist movement, but we can't allow them to drive the American agenda right now.
Absolutely, that is so incredibly important because we are at a very kind of sensitive, vulnerable, delicate stage coming out of the Trump administration, in addition to dealing with this global pandemic and trying to get people vaccinated and whatnot. Also with this kind of political civil rights backdrop of having the Derek Chauvin trial. And we just saw New Mexico last week go ahead and remove any kind of qualified immunity. And so there seems to be a big change for law enforcement and the way in which the American society treats and interacts with them. So how do you think that that will impact our future moving forward? Do you think this is something we're going to continue to move toward in terms of dismantling these protections for law enforcement to essentially elevate civil rights?
Yeah, communities around the country are demanding community safety, and that means a reformed law enforcement in this country. And we are seeing this. We saw this before the recent election in places like Camden. We're watching it in Minnesota. We're watching it in Portland, Oregon, where communities are building solutions around the type of community safety programs that they desire and need. We need law enforcement to join us in that, not resist. What we are looking for, all of us, are safe communities, healthy communities, and it's going to take all of us. That doesn't mean, though, and it doesn't exist with a 20th century law enforcement strategy. It's about 21st century community safety and policing in this moment.
Yes, bringing us all together, because the police are individuals, they are citizens, they are part of you and me and our environment, and we all have to work together. And so thank you so much for joining us, for sharing all of your insight and knowledge. And can you tell people where they can find more about you and the Western State Center?
Yes, so people can find more about Western State Center and our fight for the 21st century civil rights movement by visiting us at westernstatecenter.org, and we look forward to seeing them there.
Thanks so much again.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR, so those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.